Well, hello there. I'm Barb Tessari, and welcome to my Drive-Thru Kitchen, a stress-free approach to shopping, cooking, and eating healthy. Today is the last segment of our four-part video series of Drive-Thru Kitchen. First, we shopped for our healthy food. Then we got familiar with the ingredients that go into healthy cooking. And last time I showed you 3 easy cooking methods and how to make a basic pan sauce. Now today we're going to pull it all together and I'm going to make you a few of my favorite dishes. And you know, you only need 4 or 5 easy meals to have a great repertoire, rotating them and switching up ingredients depending on what you have on hand. And since you'll already know how to prepare them, they're all going to taste great. So today I'm going to start with my chicken, spinach, feta, and tomato dish. Then I'm going to make Asian salmon with roasted vegetables. And finally, a sizzling shrimp with corn salsa. Now, these all may sound fancy, and they are restaurant quality, but you're not going to believe how easy they are to prepare and how inexpensive they can be. So for this simple dish, I'm going to start with 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts as my protein. I'm going to be sauteing it in a little bit of olive oil. My produce, beautiful colors of spinach and tomato. Then for seasoning, simple salt, pepper, and garlic. And then my liquid, chicken broth as a staple, along with a little bit of wine. And finally, I'm going to top it off with some feta cheese. So let's start cooking. So for this dish, we're going to use the sauté method that we learned in the last segment. So I'm going to start with my heavy bottom sauté pan. I'm turning my heat up to about medium high. I'm going to let it heat up. I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil and sprinkle it in. Just about 1 to 2 tablespoons, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan. And then as that's heating up, simple salt and pepper. Don't use too much salt. You can always add it. You can't take it away. And too much salt isn't good for you because of the high sodium level. Okay, this looks like it's more than heated up. So I'm going to put it in, and remember, I want to hear that sizzle. So here we go. Oh yeah! That's what we want to hear. That means it's ready to brown. Okay, now we're going to leave that just as it is for about 2 to 3 minutes, and we're going to flip it and do the other side. Okay, so now we're finished the browning process. Remember, it only takes a couple minutes on each side. So now we're going to start to simmer. First, I'm going to add a little bit of prepared garlic. Now you can use powdered or fresh, but for everyday use, I just like using the prepared. And I like adding a little bit more because I love garlic. Don't worry too much about it. Now I'm going to let that saute for a second. Then I'm going to add just a little bit of wine, about an 1/8 cup, doesn't really matter. And of course, if you don't have wine, you can always just use the broth. It's going to turn out good anyway. All right, now I'm going to scrape a little bit of those yummy pieces that are stuck to the bottom of the pan. Remember I showed you last time, called deglazing? Because we don't want to leave those guys out. Okay, so all I'm going to do is put in a little more chicken broth, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan. Then I'm going to cover it, turn my heat down, and let it simmer for about 7 to 8 minutes, and that'll depend on the thickness of your chicken. Okay, so now our chicken is done simmering, and because I want to use those great juices, I'm going to remove the chicken. Then I'm going to add this wonderful spinach. Now, I got this spinach at Costco. It was under $4 for this big container, and it is a super full food. It is full of nutrients. And I'll tell you what, spinach cooks down really a lot. So you want to add just as much spinach as you can fill up the pan. Now you could actually use frozen spinach if you want, but I prefer to use the fresh kind if I can. Okay, Now I'm going to let that wilt just for a few minutes. Okay, and while that's wilting, I'm going to chop my cherry tomatoes. Now, you don't have to use cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes. You can use regular, but the thing I like about the smaller ones is they tend to kind of hold together better and it looks prettier. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add that to the spinach as well. Okay, let's see how that's going here. Turn it over just a little bit. Okay, now while that continues to wilt, I am going to cut my chicken. Now we like to serve this dish in a bowl, so it's kind of nice to have it already cut while you're serving it. Now what we want to do is make sure, of course, that the chicken is done all the way through, which it is. And also, when you're preparing this, you could actually cook it, slice it first and then cook it. It'll save you a few minutes of time, but it won't be as tender. So I like to take a couple extra minutes to actually cook it whole first. Doesn't take that much longer. Okay, and now that we're finished cutting the chicken, we are going to add that back to our pan. Just toss it around in here, and it looks like it needs a couple more minutes to wilt, so we'll just cover that. Like I said, give it just 2 or 3 more minutes. Okay, so now everything is wilted and ready to go, and all I'm going to do now is add just a little bit of feta cheese on top. You don't need to add a lot because feta cheese is very flavorful. So you can have a lot of flavor without a lot of calories. And there, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? And just packed with vitamins and minerals and nutrients. And boy, is it delicious. Now, you could also add other ingredients, say roasted red peppers, a little sliced onion, or black olives. And let's say you don't have any feta cheese. Well, guess what? We kind of all have Parmesan cheese in the pantry, so add that instead, and then you kind of have an Italian dish. Okay, so here are all the ingredients I'm going to use for my Asian salmon with roasted vegetables. First, we have our heart-healthy salmon as our protein, a little bit of olive oil. For our vegetables, beautiful colors of zucchini and peppers and snow peas. Simple salt and pepper, and we're going to take a shortcut by using Ken's Asian light dressing and a little bit of lime. Now you can make your own sauce if you'd like to, just by maybe using soy sauce, sesame oil, a little ginger, and it'll turn out great. But this is a great shortcut. Okay, so let's get cooking. Okay, now this dish uses the roasting method, or you can even grill it if you wanted to. I've got my oven set about 375 to 400, and now while that's preheating, I'm going to prep my vegetables. Remember in the last segment I talked about the cookie sheet and that you can line it with foil for easy cleanup? You don't have to, but it makes your job a lot easier. I'm going to take my zucchini and my Santuco knife, so it's nice and sharp and easy to cut, and I'm just going to go up and down about about 1/8 of an inch, I would say. They're flying all over the place. But see how easy that is? And it's pretty cool to do. Alrighty. Now, what you want to do is just arrange it on your cookie sheet. Try to get these little guys not to touch each other, or not overlap each other, I should say. Alright. And then, once we get that going, we're going to cut our pepper. We're going to start at the top. Many people make this complicated, but all you do is stop at the very top and wind it down to the bottom, like that. And then we simply chop into thin slices. Very easy. I'll do a little bit more with the red pepper, and really just to add some color. And you know, you can use any vegetable you want. It doesn't have to be this. It could be just all asparagus, or you could use 4 or 5 different kinds of vegetables if that's what you have available. So it really doesn't matter. But look at those pretty colors. And arrange them. Again, just touching each other. And then I'm just going to throw in a little bit of snow peas. Okay, now all I got to do is add a little oil. Just drizzle it, olive oil, on top. You really don't need a lot because as it cooks, it's going to kind of separate and get all over the other vegetables. And then a little salt and pepper. That's all you need. And now our vegetables are ready for the oven. Okay, so now we're ready to prepare our salmon for the oven. We start just like we did with the vegetables, with a cookie sheet, lined with foil. If you'd like easy cleanup, you don't have to. Here's my 2 salmon pieces, and I'm going to start by just a little salt and pepper, not too much. Again, you can always add it, you can't take it away. Then all I'm going to do is take my Asian dressing and just drizzle it on top. I don't know what that is. Okay. Drizzle it on top, not too much, just enough to cover it. And then here's a little trick. I'm going to put lime in, take a fork, and this is an easy way to release the juices. Just twist the fork into the lime and it releases all that juice real easily. And then I'm simply going to turn it over and do the same thing, whoops, with the other side. A little bit of Ken's. He gets a plug here, doesn't he? And a little more lime. Now, here's another important tip. Whenever you're cooking with seafood, you always want to add a citrus. It can be lemon, lime, grapefruit, orange. Doesn't really matter, whatever you have on hand, because citrus brings out the flavor of seafood. Without it, you'll find it tastes a little bit flat. Okay, so it was that simple. Everything's ready to go in the oven. Okay, so now our vegetables and our salmon are ready for the oven. Now you want to cook these probably maybe 10 to 12 minutes, shaking or turning about the halfway point. You want that salmon a little bit flaky. Try not to make it over dry, but it's really a personal preference. We'll check back on this later. Okay, so here are our ingredients for the dish. We have our deveined and already peeled shrimp as our protein. For our salsa, we have simple onion and tomato and a little bit of lime, as well as seasoning of garlic, of course, and cumin and chili powder, which is very traditional in Mexican cooking, as well as salt. I'm going to saute the shrimp in a little bit of olive oil, of course, and wine if you have it. Also, if you like a little heat, we can add a serrano pepper, and I'll talk a little bit how to safely use these. And finally, some fresh cilantro. As I said, it's inexpensive and it really adds a lot of pop to your salsa. All right, so here's all the ingredients, so let's get cooking. Okay, I'm going to start off by making a basic salsa. Start with an onion, and I'm going to cut off the ends and peel off the outer skin, which sometimes can be a little bit tricky. Let's see how it works for me. Almost. All right, that's the hardest part. Okay, then we're going to slice it in thin slices. Now you want to make sure when you buy your onion, you use a sweet onion. You don't want just a yellow onion because they can be a little bit hot and it can ruin your salsa. So look for Vidalia or sweet onions. Okay, cut that as much as you can without cutting your hand. And then we're going to start dicing it. And again, when you're using a good knife, it doesn't take long. I actually have a lot of onion here. I'll move that to the side. You can see it. Just chop away. Reduces a lot of stress. It's kind of a mindless activity. Okay, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Just enough so that you can sort of get a piece in every mouthful. Okay, so we're done with that. I'm just going to put it in a bowl, and then we're going to start to chop our tomato. Okay, so now we're ready to chop our tomato. Now, Same thing with the onion. We're just going to chop it thinly and then start dicing it. Now you can use cherry tomatoes, grape tomatoes, or just any kind of regular tomatoes. If they're out of your garden, even better. And it just takes a few seconds, not a lot of time, a lot faster than using any kind of equipment. All right, now as far as how much, ratio should be about 50/50 to onion to tomato, but a little more, a little less. It's okay, it doesn't really make that much difference. And I'm going to cut a few more in here real quick because it looks like I have a little too much tomato for onion. So, real quick. All right, that looks like it's about right. All right, now all we want to do is stir it up. Yep, got my red and my onion going on. Okay. Now, if you like your salsa spicy, you can add a little bit of a serrano, a jalapeno pepper. Let me show you how you can prepare it safely. First, what you want to do is cut off the end and then slice it right down the middle. And what you want to do is get rid of all the fleshy part and the seeds. And so you take the back of a spoon, this is the easiest way to do it, and you press down and you pull. And as you pull, you get rid of all of the white part and the seeds, and you're left with the more mild green skin. So we'll do that the other side. And then we simply dice it really, 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 really fine. And it just takes a second. Really, really fine. And then when we add it, we want to do it just a little at a time. Okay, and then check for how hot it is. That way we don't add too much. Also, when you are finished, always wash your hands afterwards. Okay? So let's turn that around a little bit. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of seasoning, chili powder, and a little cumin. Remember, traditional Mexican seasoning, and a little bit of garlic powder, and some salt. Okay. And again, go under on the seasoning. You can always add more. Okay, so now we're ready to add our lime. And just like I showed you in the last scene, just gonna take a fork, sort of just squish it on in there. Maybe just about a half. Okay. And then I'm going to add my cilantro, which is my favorite part. You don't like cilantro? You don't have to put it in. Now, some people peel these off leaf by leaf. I just kind of take the bottom part where there's a lot of stems, and then I just chop the leaves. And you get a few stems in there. I don't really care. You can't really tell it when you taste. Just don't get the big stems in there. So again, easy chopping. I'm telling you guys, it gets fun. All right, and then we just add it on in. And I think that looks like about enough. Okay, now stir it up, and there's one more ingredient that I want to add, and that is our corn, because that makes it a corn salsa. What you have here is a basic salsa. So by adding corn, it's suddenly a corn salsa. Now you can actually add black beans, avocado, any kind of citrus like mango. There's so many variations on a salsa. Okay, now what I'm going to do is taste it just to see if it needs anything. Now what I'm figuring is I could use a little salt, and actually I want it a little spicier. So I'm going to add just a little more serrano pepper. I could throw in a few more dashes of Mexican seasoning. Why not? And then try it again. Perfect. Okay, so that was the process for a basic salsa. And you know, you can apply that same process with other cuisines. For example, an Italian bruschetta. Start with those diced tomato and onion, and then add Italian seasoning, like oregano or basil, and maybe a little Parmesan cheese and olive oil. Or how about a Greek flair, using roasted peppers, sun-dried tomatoes, black olives, and feta cheese? The point is, it's the same process. And in the back of the Drive-Thru Kitchen Guide, I show you variations of ingredients depending on the cuisine you want. Okay, now that our salsa is ready, we're ready for the shrimp. And this is only going to take a couple minutes. We're going to use a searing process, which, like I said in the last segment, it's just like sauteing, it's just a little higher heat. Starting with my olive oil, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan, right? Now you see how this is smoking already? That's because I want it nice and hot. Okay, immediately I'm adding my shrimp. Woo! See the difference? That's what I'm talking about. Okay, now all I want to do is add a little bit of prepared garlic. Now you can use fresh in this case, which I often do, because you really like that garlic flavor. And a little squeeze of lime. Like I said, always want that citrus. Okay? And maybe a little bit of salt. There you go. See, it's already getting pink. A little blackened. It's like almost ready. Okay, and then I'm just going to add a little splash of wine. Hey, a little more. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the salsa into the pan, and I don't usually use all of it. I save some in case somebody wants a little bit more, or you can even use it with some chips. But I like to put some in there because it kind of makes the flavors all come together. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. That's looking pretty. All right, and then I'm just going to cover it, and I'm saying like really 2 minutes, and it's going to be done, ready to serve. And here we have the 3 dishes I prepared for you today. We have our chicken with spinach, tomato, and feta cheese, the salmon and vegetables that we had roasting in the oven, and our sizzling shrimp with corn salsa. Now, each one of these dishes costs under $12 if you're a smart shopper. Now, there are a lot more great dish ideas in the Drive-Thru Kitchen Guide, but really all you need is your protein and your vegetables, add a few more ingredients for flavor and flair, and you've got yourself a healthy, inexpensive, and delicious meal, 20 minutes or less, without pre-planning and without having to rely on recipes. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video series, and in the guide you will have reminders of all the information and tips I've provided for you, as well as my philosophy and guidance on how to have a healthy lifestyle in spite of our busy, stressful lives. Well, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the series. I'm Barb Tessari, and as Julia Child would say, bon appetit. Visit my website at www.barbmotivates.com or email me anytime with questions or comments you have at barb@barbmotivates.com.